Do you want anxiety? I don't want anxiety. Hey, let's get the safe system for social and generalized anxiety over at quietbegins.com. Life presents the toughest challenges. Every day you are faced with decisions that test your ability to express who you really want to be in this world. We're told to keep saying affirmations and keep thinking positively, but what do you do when that stuff doesn't work? Welcome to the Overwhelmed Brain, where you'll learn to make decisions that are right for you so that you can create the life you want now. Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Paul Coliani and I'm here to help you increase your emotional intelligence so that you can avoid dysfunction, handle toxic situations with grace and ease, and show up as your authentic self. Everything I talk about on the show is my personal opinion and is meant for informational and educational purposes only. Always consult a medical or psychological professional before making any changes that could affect your physical or mental health. All right, I got an email from someone in his teenage years that seems wiser than I was at that age. As far as when I was 19, I was not thinking, I wasn't thinking. I wasn't thinking of a lot of stuff. And this person wrote to me, and I'm going to call him Joe. And Joe is asking me a question about trusting people and how can you get into a space of trusting people. And I'm just going to read you the email. And I just wanted to kind of prime you for what the subject matter of this email was about. Joe says, you've been an integral part of my mental health journey, and your insight and past experiences have helped me immensely in adopting a much healthier mindset. Great to hear. I'm the stereotypical teenage burnout, 19 now, and I have a history of getting bullied in past trauma that I never healed from up until this past year. I ended up resorting to drinking. I'm in a much better mindset now, but some residual problems still arise. I've just barely gotten over the hump of accepting myself for who I am, warts and all, and I'm making my first step toward pulling enjoyment out of life again. As someone who was previously depressed and anxious, I'm making great efforts to try and feel positive emotions again. And part of this has been making myself susceptible to the bad again. For me, this means approaching my fear and distrust of people. What I've come to notice is that I have an innate mistrust of people, and I keep my guard up in almost every situation I enter. When I see strangers on the street, I'll try to protect myself by making up stories in my head about them. Stories like, well, they're probably extremely rude anyways. This has kept me out of even taking jobs in anticipation that I might be working with these false characters in my head. It's a cynical worldview that's meant to protect me, but I want to get rid of it, and I want to keep myself open to the love that people can give me. That being said, what can I do to be more emotionally tender and less cynical about this whole situation? I want to form these genuine human connections and stop myself from hating or otherwise being disgusted with other people. Logically, I know that they're just trying to live their life and may be kind and compassionate people like yourself. But, thank you. But my brain refuses to quit seeing the general public in such a negative light. I want to learn to love people again. If there's any advice you could give, I'd love to hear it. Thank you so much. You've done so many people such a great service. For that, I hope you're proud of yourself. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for your kind words throughout, and I appreciate that you wrote this to me and shared this with me. I get where you're at in this cynical space. I actually walk around quite cynical myself. I shouldn't say cynical. I should say skeptical. I walk around skeptical. I really don't have an innate trust for people as well. Now, that doesn't mean I don't like them. That doesn't mean I won't talk to them and give them an opportunity to share their views, their values, their beliefs. It's just that when you have gone through what you've gone through, the bullying, the childhood traumas, whatever they are, you tend to have a different view of the world. I went through that. I went through some old childhood traumas and bullying, grew up in an alcoholic household, and all kinds of stuff that, a lot of us have our own experiences when we're younger, and we develop these perceptions of the world. And the world shows up through these filters that we create, and then we have certain fears and insecurities that can develop if we never look at those filters. The good news is you're 19. At 19, like I said at the beginning, I wasn't thinking. I was experiencing life. I wanted to move to Florida and watch beautiful women. I mean, that was my childhood mindset. I'm not saying you're a child, but I was. I was a young child at 19. I just had, I could drive a car and I was working and I was saving money, but I was still very immature for my age. So to have the kind of thoughts and thinking that you're doing now, you're already light years ahead. It sounds like you won't hit that, hey, I'm 35, midlife crisis, I need to go to therapy, like a lot of us did when we were growing up and we had the same kind of background. But if you can address this and tackle this now, you're going to have a great life, or at least you're going to know how to handle the challenges and the stresses that come at you. So if you're listening to the overwhelmed brain and you're learning about yourself, and whether you seek therapy or not, but you're always doing self-help, you're always trying to improve yourself in some way, then you're already on the right path. So even though you have what you might think are these limitations, like I see that person, I don't trust them, so I make something up just to justify why I don't trust them. You might have those thoughts going on, but even though you have those thoughts, I want you to give yourself a break and, be easy on yourself, because coming out of the childhood that you experience and starting to accept yourself is simply a stepping stone. And it's a stepping stone in the right direction. It's a good direction. So pat yourself on the back, inflate that ego a little bit. I'm all for it. And when you do, you say, I've come so far. Wow, this is great. So what? You have some skepticism or cynicism about other people. And I know what you're thinking, that's not, I don't want a motivational speech, Paul. I want advice. I want something I can use. I agree. I'm going to see if I can help you there. But, first things first, get into the space that, hey, I'm 19 and I'm learning this stuff so much faster, so much sooner than so many other people. And that already puts you ahead of the game. And you are already on the right track from the stuff you shared. So remember to remind yourself that you've already gotten pretty far. And if you're not there yet, that's okay too. And if you have to go through another duration or length of time where you are cynical about other people, then so be it. I'm helping you disconnect from the resistance or let go of the resistance that you have about your own limitations. When we let go of the resistance that we have about ourselves, we give ourselves a break. That's similar to what I say on the forgiveness episodes where I talk about forgiveness. Forgiveness is for giving yourself a break for how you showed up at one time or for how you're showing up now. You forgive yourself a break. So give yourself a break. Forgive yourself. Even though you may not think you need to forgive yourself, then just take out the word for and say, I'm going to give myself a break. I am being judgmental toward that person. I'm making stuff up about that person. That's okay. I'll give myself a break. That's okay. Because I'm still learning this stuff. I'm still getting used to the world. I need to learn to trust the world again. And you may not think you're there yet. And maybe you have these challenges that come up for you. Maybe you feel like grabbing a drink and swallowing your negative emotions or something. I hope that you're able to overcome that if you haven't already. Because that's not a fun lifestyle, to get addicted to alcohol or any type of drugs where you are covering or hiding or repressing or denying your emotions. When you do all that, then you want to drink more and you want to smoke more and you want to shoot more and whatever the drug terms are. You want to do all of that stuff because you don't want to deal with your emotions. But what you're doing now is you're dealing with them. Paul, I want to deal with my emotions. Great. How many 19-year-olds say that? You may not know. I do. I hardly ever get that. I get the occasional person in their teenage years that writes to me, and hey, there's an old soul. There's someone who's developing wisdom early. I mean, that's the thought that goes through my head. This person is developing wisdom so early. I didn't start until I was in my late 30s. And here somebody is that comes out of the woodwork and says, you know what, I've been through this stuff, and I had a traumatic past, and I've been bullied, and I feel stressed and I've been drinking and I'm just trying to get on a better path and I'm starting to get there, but I have this one issue. So again, I'm going to bring it back and say, give yourself a break, forgive yourself a break if it needs to be there. And along that same lines about forgiveness, you may have someone in your past. I'm not saying that you need to forgive them. If you listen to my forgiveness episodes, I don't necessarily believe you have to forgive anyone. That's a controversial comment, but I don't believe you do. I believe that once you're in a better space in yourself, and that person no longer occupies your mind, and when you think about that person and there's no negative impact when you think about them, then the forgiveness has happened in one way, shape, or form. And my version of forgiveness is forgiving yourself a break for how you showed up at that time. Just like I can relate to your bullying. When I was young, when I was 16, 17, my quote, classmates bullied me. And they would do certain things to make me feel bad or stupid or small. And so going through life and having this trauma in my past, even though I may not have been bullied as much as some other people I saw, I still had the experience I had. The only experience I know is my own, just like the only experience you know is your own, and it had an impact, and it hurt, and it made you feel a certain way. And over the years, you carried this hurt with you, or you carried this feeling, and you needed to do something with it. And perhaps, like me, when I thought about those people, I would be like, oh, those jerks, I never want to see them again. And I would have these feelings, but there would be a big negative association with it that I was carrying. Anytime you think of someone and it makes you feel that, like, really get your blood boiling, I think that's where forgiveness needs to come in. Again, I'm not saying you need to forgive that person, but I'm telling you some of the happenings in my youth when I was bullied, when I felt traumatized, is that growing older, can I forgive myself for how I showed up at that time? Now, I know that sounds like I am putting the blame on you and making you fully responsible for being bullied. That's not the point at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that we often will blame ourselves for not doing something or for showing up in a certain way when we believed we should have known better. Just like now, if I was put in that same position where these people were bullying me, I would approach it and react to it in an entirely different way. It would be sort of laughable the way they bullied me back then, because I have a different approach now. I have boundaries. I have an understanding of that I'm worth something, that I'm valuable, that I am important. And them trying to belittle or demean me doesn't affect me. I mean, it might affect me. It would certainly put me in a different space. I might get angry. But now I'm in a better space to protect myself and defend myself and even tell them to back off. But back then, I didn't have that power. I didn't know where that power was. I didn't know where to get it. I just knew that I was in a bad situation and I didn't like it, and I backed off and I just took it. I just let them bully me. And that wasn't something I really let happen. They just did it. But when I look back, I think how I could have handled it differently. And this is something that we might ruminate on. How could I have handled that differently? I should have done this. I should have done that. I should have waited after school when he wasn't looking and pow, I should have done something. And so we have all these thoughts about what we should have or could have done better. And I believe those thoughts, those things that pop up and give us that negative feeling are the things inside of us that we need to forgive ourselves for. Because I could have and I should have sound like regrets. They sound like there's something that is unfinished, like we should have done something differently. So we feel this unfinished feeling and we carry this unfinished feeling, and the forgiveness kind of finishes it. It closes the loop. It makes us feel like we don't have to carry it around anymore. And so thinking about, for example, being bullied in your past. Yeah, you probably could have shown up differently. You probably could have said this differently. You probably could have done a lot of things differently. Oh, I should have called my mom. I should have went to the principal. whatever it was, I don't even know if it was in school for you, but for me, it was in school. Whatever it was for you, think about how you feel bad about yourself for the would have, could have, should have kind of moments. I would have done that now, knowing what I know now. I could have done that and I should have done that. Okay, now we have something to work with. Once you have something to work with, then you can decide if you want to forgive yourself and move on. Yeah, I could have done that, but you know what? I forgive myself for showing up that way, and I'm going to move on now because it's not important to me anymore. So I know that might not be exactly what you're dealing with today, but I gave you that little exercise or technique because I'd rather have you do that than reach for a drink. I'd rather have you do that than, swallow your negative emotions in any other way, because it's more important to have them come up. If you have a negative emotion come up, and try to work with it and process it and hopefully release it, or at least finish that business that's still unfinished inside of you, than to swallow it back down. And, that could certainly have an effect on how you perceive the world today. You see someone walking down the street and you make up something, they're probably not trustworthy. Oh, they're probably a jerk anyway. And it helps, like you said, protect you. I mean, who thinks like that? I mean, at 19, I wasn't thinking like that. I was thinking, I'm not going to go near that guy, but I would never think, well, what's the cause of me feeling this way, not wanting to go near that guy? I mean, I don't have those thoughts back then. But now that you're having them, that is an evolved, emotionally intelligent way to look at things and way to perceive things. So again, pat yourself on the back, and I mean that with complete sincerity, and also allow yourself to look at people that way without calling yourself a bad person. Because we all have judgments and we all have thoughts and we all have ways to protect ourselves and we all have ways to justify thoughts. And sometimes we say things that aren't true inside our mind. So you might look at someone and say something that's not true, and it's not true, or at least you haven't figured out if it's true or not because you really never talked to the person, but be okay with it. That's step one. Just be okay. Besides the forgiveness part, step one is to be okay with your judgment or your commentary, your inner dialogue about someone else. Hey, I just made a comment about that person. That was a stupid comment. Wait. Why am I saying that's stupid? It's okay if I have that comment because I'm still trying to work through things. I'm still trying to figure things out for myself. I'm still young. I'm working on life. I'm working on what my next big steps are in life. So I'm going to have a lot to deal with. At 19, there's a lot coming at you. Experiences are still happening. When you hit your 20s, it's all about experiencing, it's not all about experiencing, but what's happening is that you're trying to figure out where you fit in the world. And I want to enjoy life too. I mean, this is the thought that comes up too. I want to have fun because I know when I hit a certain age, it's nothing but work from that point on, and then life's over. No, I don't mean to paint that picture at all, because you can have a full life, you can work, you can have a family, and everything can turn out great, and it all works together when it's a good balance. But when you're younger, it feels like I want to get as much enjoyment out of life and figure out where I fit. So what do I do? And I don't want these problems. So you have these challenges or these problems in your life. How do I handle them? What do I do with them? Let me give you number 2 in my thought process here, which is asking yourself, let me quote you actually. You said, well, they're probably extremely rude anyway. So you look at someone and you say, they're probably extremely rude anyway. Number 2 is ask yourself, okay, so what if they are? Okay, so what if they are? They're extremely rude. What if I go over there and say hello and they just say, get out of my face? What if that happens? So number 2 is that. You just ask that question. Now what that's going to do is help you paint a picture of an outcome that you don't want. And you're probably thinking, yeah, I already do that. I already paint the outcome I don't want. Because if they're rude, it makes me feel a certain way. It makes me feel threatened. I feel like I was younger when I was bullied. Absolutely. But now you're getting older and you're able to handle things differently. You're handling situations differently. The emotional intelligence is increasing in you, so you are able to look at things from a more adult perspective. And I quote adult because some people are adults and they still act like kids, but you're a kid and you're acting like an adult. And, an emotionally intelligent adult. You're questioning things. You want to improve yourself. You don't want to drink your problems away. You want to have a better life and have more happiness and more enjoyment. And again, you're on the right track. So what do you do? What we're talking about now, I'm going to repeat number 2, is ask yourself, okay, so what if that's the case? What if that's what happens? So what if they do? This is all part of number 2. So what if they do? So what if they're rude? So what if they do yell at me? So what if they get angry at me? Then what? So there's a perspective that, like I said, you may already do. And what it does is help you paint the picture of a possible outcome that you don't want. The third question, or the third thing to think about, is why don't I want that? Why do I care? What's going to happen? What am I really protecting here? Number 3 is all about really being introspective and reflective of what really matters that you're protecting. Because you could say, well, I don't want to get punched in the face. That could be a valid reason to protect yourself. But your logic, your rationalizing comes into play, and you tell yourself, that person's not going to just punch me in the face for saying hi. That's the rational part of you, and we tend not to listen to the rational part of us when we are in some sort of post-traumatic stress, or we're carrying around old emotional triggers and we don't know how to get rid of them. We carry around these perceptions and have these limitations that we're trying to live with or trying to overcome. But really, what are we trying to protect that's so important that we're willing to never take risks? We're willing to never find out what might happen because we don't want to what? We don't want to lose something. We don't want to feel what? We don't want to feel pain. We don't want to feel hurt. We don't want to be in that bully situation again. But we can even break that down. I would look at a bullying situation as not so much the act, but how I felt when that was happening. How I felt was powerless. How I felt was afraid. I felt like I couldn't defend myself. I felt like I felt humiliated. I felt embarrassed. I felt just fear. But fear about what? What was I afraid? What did I think was going to happen if, for example, they embarrassed me or they humiliated me? Oh my God, they humiliated me. What does that mean? How is that a bad thing? That's the next question. I think we're on number 4. How is that a bad thing? What if they humiliate me? What if they punch me in the face? What if they yell at me at the top of their lungs and everyone looks at me and thinks I'm a bad guy, or I'm inferior in some way, or I'm stupid? As you get older and as you get even more wiser and more emotionally intelligent and you learn about life, you start to realize that the people around you that you think will cause you problems or will show up in a way that's difficult, like someone starts yelling or someone's pointing their finger at you in a bullying or intimidating way, you realize that the people that are doing that are often looked down upon by the majority of people. Now, what I mean by that is when you're younger, a lot of kids, they don't know that it's not nice for a bully to do that to someone else. Some do. A lot of them do. Kids know that bullying isn't nice, but a lot of kids will rally with the bully and laugh with the bully as they're bullying you. But when you get older, that goes away. And it's important to remember that the bully in your life now, or the one that's intimidating you, or even if you're making up the idea that they might intimidate you or be a bully, most people would look at them and look down on them as sad and pathetic. And that's really what happens. If you were in the grocery store and you saw someone yelling at the clerk and really making him or her feel bad, and they start crying, and you can tell that he or she is powerless to do anything because this person is so angry, who would you look as the pathetic one? Because when I think of a scenario like that, I'm looking at the patron going, what the heck is that guy's problem, and why is he giving her or him such a bad time? especially when you see the reaction from the person being intimidated or bullied. When their reaction is fear and they don't know what to do, you can see that the other person is trying to take their power away or trying to appear powerful. That person who's trying to take someone's power away does from a place of empty security. I mean, they are so insecure in themselves that they have to take away someone else's power so that they feel powerful themselves. And that's pathetic. It's a very sad and pathetic place for someone to be. So when you see this happen out in public, you're going to look at the person being angry and go, what is that guy's problem? That's really pathetic. That's just terrible behavior. So the reason I tell you that is that if you walk around thinking, oh no, it's going to be about me, if someone yells at me, or if someone belittles me, or if someone is disrespectful to me, the majority of people that might witness that aren't going to look at you and laugh. I mean, that's what happens when we're kids, unfortunately. They're going to look at the other person and go, what is that person's problem? And that's a good reminder that it's not really about you. It's not all about you. I'm not saying that you're selfish or narcissistic. I'm saying that in situations like this, when you walk around in fear, especially of other people, that the other people that show up in your life that are toxic in any way, they're going to be the ones that people look at and go, whoa, what is that person's problem? And you'll get a rally of support. Does this always happen? No. Does this happen with every person that you'll ever meet? No. Some people are crafty. Some people are manipulative, and they'll trick everyone and make you the fool. I mean, that happens in emotionally abusive relationships. That happens when a person is so clever and insidious that they want everyone looking at you so that you feel ashamed or guilty or little, and they feel powerful. That happens. But the majority of the time with other people, it doesn't. So you just have to keep that in mind. That helps to give you a different perspective. If you are carrying a perspective that if somebody came up to you and intimidated you in any way, that you wouldn't feel like you are in the spotlight. Because they're really in the spotlight. They're the ones making a fool of themselves. So that's number 4, I think. And number 5 is you said you want to learn to love people again. And number 5 is you take risks. Now, at 19, you can take a lot of risks. That's what young people do. They take risks. I'm not saying that's a good idea to take risks and all that, but you take a risk that what you fear may come true, and you do it anyway. It's that saying, you feel the fear and you do it anyway. Why would I make you do that? I think it's important to remember that what we fear usually doesn't come true. It can. Anything is possible. But what we fear usually doesn't come true. And I'm talking about with strangers. If you know someone, if you have a relative or a friend or your romantic partner, and you know that every time you do X, they do Y, then you already have references from the past. You already know that your hypothesis is correct and that you will get this result if you do this behavior. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about complete strangers. Because you asked, I don't know these people, yet I make up these stories. And so one of the biggest obstacles in my life was to overcome my boundaries. And when we come back, I'm going to share with you something I've shared on the show before. I'm going to share with you how I took steps to overcome my boundaries, which was getting comfortable being uncomfortable by taking risks. So let's talk about risks when we come back, right after this. All right, I'm going to make this really short. If you are experiencing any type of anxiety, social anxiety, generalized anxiety, anxiety over going to your family's house, anxiety about honoring and standing up for yourself, just like I'm about to talk about in the next segment here, honoring your boundaries and such. When the anxiety comes, what do you do with it? Where does it go? And do you want to keep it? The answer is no. You don't want to keep it. And absolutely check out quietbegins.com. I have an audio masterclass over there called the Safe Empowerment System for Social and Generalized Anxiety. And I think it's going to be a real big help if you're dealing with anxiety. And, anxiety is not something we want. It is a normal response to situations that require us to take action of some sort, but our mind and body trick us into thinking a lot of the events in our life require us to be fearful or nervous about. And really, it's not true. I mean, not every event in our life requires us to be nervous. Not every person we meet requires us to feel anxious. We shouldn't have to feel like we're always being judged. We shouldn't have to feel like we're not good enough or we're not smart enough. Just like everything that Joe is experiencing now is probably some anxiety involved there. So one of the things that you can do for yourself is go to quietbegins.com and check out the SAFE system. Maybe it's for you. Maybe it'll be exactly what you need to start to help feeling more confident and calm and relaxed in situations that you didn't feel like that before. That would be a different feeling. That would be a better feeling. And maybe it's exactly what you need. Check it out. See if it's right for you. quietbegins.com. All right, welcome back. I told you that we're going to talk about taking risks. And in my life, taking risks has been probably the most personal growth I'd ever experienced. Every time I took a risk, it was a massive personal growth change or shift in me. It improved me. It improved my thinking. It cleared my thinking. It cleared my fears. Because what I did was test those fears. I wanted to find out if what I was making up in my mind was true. This isn't easy to do. I'm not saying that everyone's going to be able to do this. I'm saying if you start thinking this way, that you might be able to start challenging your own fears so that the stories that you make up, you find out if they're true or not. And this was easier as I was getting older. Wasn't easy when I was younger. Actually, what's interesting is that when you're younger, you feel more invincible. At least some of us did. I felt more invincible. I would ride my dirt bike and I would take these big jumps and I felt invincible because, I didn't wear a helmet. I would go fast thinking there's no way I could ever get hurt. And then one day I fell off like a 15-foot cliff and I woke up and I said, what just happened? Because I blacked out. Luckily, I was alive. I had a sprained ankle, but I felt invincible. That's why I did it. And where does that invincibility go? Again, not all of us feel invincible, but as a young boy climbing trees and doing all this crazy stuff, that invincible feeling didn't apply with emotions because I was afraid of what might happen if I showed up as my authentic self, if I said what was really on my mind, if I honored my boundaries. But one of the things that happens as you grow up is whether you felt invincible or not, as you grow older, you start to realize that life gets shorter and shorter, and here we are wasting time walking around in fear, not taking chances. And what are we missing? So I know this doesn't apply to everything, but you think about what am I missing if I don't take a chance? What am I missing? I mean, that's what I started asking myself. I was in my 30s and I had several failed relationships. And what's that? I think my marriage was starting to fail at that time, or my late 30s. And I was asking myself, I keep walking around in fear because I don't want to say what's really on my mind. I don't want to honor myself and stand up for what's right and stand up for what I will and won't accept. I didn't want to do any of that because I had fear that people might yell at me or get mad at me or leave me or hurt me in some way. And so my fear of not wanting to be hurt, not wanting to be left, ran the show. When your fear runs the show and you aren't willing to take risks to find out if what you really want to say will actually lead to the outcome you're thinking of, then you end up staying where you are and you're like a dog tied to a stake that runs around in a circle and digs a rut. And the dog just keeps going around the stake in the middle of the yard, and he has a chain that's like 10 feet. And now you have a 10-foot circle in the yard because the dog, that's the length that they go. That's as far as they can go. And that is, we can use that as an analogy or a metaphor for our comfort zone. That is as far as I'll go. My stake is in the middle of this field, and I am chained to it with a 10-foot chain, or however long you want to make that chain, and I can only go as far as 10 feet. And in every direction I go, it's only 10 feet. There is my circle. Now I'm chained by my own fear. I am chained to this stake in the middle of the field, and the chain represents my fear because I don't want to go past this circle. So I'm just going to keep digging this rut. And the rut is old behavior that we keep repeating. Oh, that guy just gave me the look, so I'm going to repeat the behavior that I always do so that I stay in my rut. And when so-and-so yells at me, I will cower like I always do to stay in my rut. Or if you yell back and you feel bad at yourself for yelling back, that's part of the rut. Or whatever you do that is your comfort response. And start thinking about your comfort responses. If someone yells at me, what is my comfort response? What makes me feel comfortable and less fearful? For me, it was, I better be quiet because this person's yelling at me and I don't want them to get any madder. And if I say anything, it might incite more anger and I don't want that to happen. So I'll be quiet. And of course I was like that. I got that from childhood because when my stepfather was yelling and kicking holes in the wall and throwing his glasses of alcohol against the wall and smashing into pieces, I didn't want to say a word. So I took that fear from childhood and brought it with me into my adult life. And it took a long time to realize, yelling doesn't have to mean that I am in complete frozen fear. It doesn't have to. Well, what does it mean now? I didn't have any good references. My only reference was when someone yells, they are violently drunk and they could go off on me at any time because I just saw it happen to my mom. What could happen to me? I don't want to find out. So I bring that fear into my adult world, and I think other people are going to do the same thing because I have no other positive reference. And why don't I have another positive reference? Because I never tempted fate. I never took the risk. If I take a risk of standing up for myself while this person's yelling, I already know what's going to happen because that's my only reference, my only belief that I know what's going to happen. So I better not say a word. I better submit. And I better not stand up for myself and tell them how disrespectful it is if they're yelling at me. I better not do any of that stuff because I know what the result is. And so like Joe was saying in his message, I know the result, so I'm not going to do that. That's too scary. So this is where we come in. What are we on 5? We want to take a risk, meaning you don't start with the most violent, angry person taking the risk. You start small. You start small, like honoring yourself in ways that no matter what happens, it's not going to kill you. That's probably a terrible way to put it. But let me give you an example. I told the story here once of I was in a music store and the cashier put an extra charge of a longer extended warranty on my bill without telling me. Now, he did some double talking earlier saying that, hey, this will come with a great extended warranty, but he didn't tell me he was going to charge for it. He didn't tell me any of that stuff. And I had my suspicions about this same cashier before, so I was already a little skeptical of him. But when I saw that charge, normally, if I didn't have boundaries before, I probably would have not said anything. Like, I should always bow down to authority because he knows best. That was kind of where I was. But I had practiced some boundaries, and it was an opportunity for me to stand up for myself and say, hey, look, you take that charge off because I didn't ask for that. And on top of that, that's very unethical. And I said that, and I really couldn't believe I said that, but like I said, I had been practicing honoring myself. But let's just say that I never did. Let's just say that was the first time that I wanted to honor myself, and I wanted to stand up and speak up for myself. It would be worth taking the risk, because the result of that risk, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, that could be number 6 if you're writing these down. What's the worst that could happen? Well, I don't know. I guess he could be angry, or maybe he would punch me. I mean, that would be the worst that could happen. What's really going to happen? Number 6.5. What's really going to happen? Well, what's really going to happen is he'll probably go, I'm sorry. And if I had thought that through before, that would have been a different outcome than I originally had in my mind of fearing standing up for myself because it might upset the other person. What really did happen was that he actually said, I'm sorry. I thought you wanted it. And he was backpedaling and all that stuff. And I wouldn't take it. And so when I said that's unethical and you shouldn't do that, he was backpedaling and trying to figure out what to say next because he knew he did it. I knew he did it and I knew it was wrong. And he was a good manipulator and he talked people into things that he didn't even tell them that he was going to do and just put it on there. So anyway, what I'm saying is that I took a risk because even though I had worked on my boundaries, it was still a fearful moment for me. I did have fear that came up that caused me to create an outcome I didn't want. And this is what happens is that we don't take risks because we believe the outcome is going to be something that it usually isn't. Or if it is going to be, then we already know the person well enough. But we make up stuff. And you know you're making up stuff. You told me in your letter. So my point is, when you have an opportunity to stand up for yourself and honor your boundaries, what's going to happen is you're going to reinforce that what you thought was going to happen didn't. And you're also going to reinforce that you were able to do this for yourself, increasing your ability to stand up for yourself, honor yourself, and be more authentic in the future. And when you get through that moment, when the outcome happens and it wasn't what you originally thought would happen, the benefit comes in the form of being able to stand up for yourself in other situations so that you don't look at the world through your old filters. And this is where I can make this final comment, is that after you go through the process of taking the risk and finding out that what you originally thought was going to happen doesn't, and it reinforces that it's okay to take more risks, baby step risks. And when you get through it, you realize that you can get through it and you can do it again if you need to. It builds up confidence in you. It builds up a strength in your character, in your integrity, in everything that you want to increase, in your self-worth, in your self-esteem. And when you walk around in that type of self-confidence and self-assuredness, you don't necessarily focus on other people. You don't think about what they're thinking. You don't give it 2 seconds of thought because it doesn't matter, because you're feeling good inside yourself. And so the roundabout answer to Joe's email here is when you're able to continue working on your self-worth, your self-esteem, your confidence levels, and just the ability to get through some of the challenging situations that you might be afraid to get through. But when you get through them, you reinforce that it's okay and that you are stronger because of it. Then you find out you really don't have to make up anything about anyone that comes your way because you know you'll be able to handle anything that comes your way. This is a step-by-step process, and you have to get to that point where you feel comfortable inside yourself so that you stop focusing on other people and making excuses inside your mind that you don't want to deal with them because maybe they're a jerk, maybe they're rude. But you wouldn't even have to say that, because when you say that, when you think those things, what you're really doing is trying to find an excuse to not get anywhere near them because you yourself don't feel prepared to handle them or whatever they bring. So this is really about increasing all of those things I told you about, strengthening your own convictions and beliefs and honoring yourself to the point where if somebody were to come up to you and activate some old fear, you know you can handle it. Just like when my stepfather showed up at the door at my mom's house and it was the first time I had to say, no, you're not welcome here. That was a very, very fearful place for me. That was probably one of the biggest fears I had, is standing up to him for the first time. And I was 40. I was looking at him as this shorter guy than me, older guy than me. I knew I could take him if I really had to, but I don't really want to fight. And would I actually throw a punch at him? I don't know. But when I said, you're not welcome here, I waited for him to punch me. I took the risk. I believed that he would probably hurt me. But I wanted to take the risk because I knew that I had to get past this in myself. I knew that I had to come to a new place with taking risks and confronting people and just standing up for the people that I love, including myself. I stood up for my mom, so I didn't allow her ex-husband into the house. It was a big risk. It was a big challenge, and I improved because of it, because I found out that I could do it. It was a reinforcement that what I thought was going to happen didn't happen. What I thought was going to be bad turned out to be the best thing I could have done for me and for my mom. Does this mean that it'll work out every time? No, it won't. And I just want to make sure that you understand that too. If you try this for the first time, if you take a risk and you decide to point out an error that a cashier made on your bill or whatever, because that might be a situation that maybe you feared bringing up because you don't like confrontation or whatever. But let's just say it was something minor that you wanted to practice and they yelled at you and they got angry at you. Don't give up. Don't be that person that says, oh, great, it happened. I knew this would happen. I'm never going to do it again. Don't stonewall yourself like that. See, that is a realization that you need to continue doing this in yourself because, quite frankly, there are people like that in the world. See that as the opportunity to continue improving yourself, because when somebody does something like that, you need to be mentally and emotionally and sometimes even physically prepared. Doesn't mean you'll be able to get through every situation. And again, when you take these baby steps, you'll get to a point where you feel confident enough in yourself, where you get to the goal of your email to me, Joe, which is just be able to walk down the street without having to make stuff up about other people and having a fear and distrust about other people. Fear and distrust, that comes from within. When I look at another person and I immediately have a distrust for them, it's different for me now, but it used to be when I was very, very skeptical about a lot of people and I couldn't trust too many people at all. It was because I didn't trust myself to be able to handle whatever they threw at me. The origin of distrust is often that. We might look at someone and say, whoa, I don't trust that person at all. I'm going to stay away from that person. And it might have something to do with how we may not be able to trust ourselves if they do something that we can't handle. So this is why I say when you continue improving yourself and working on yourself and getting more confident in yourself, then you don't walk around so much with distrust. You walk around with confidence that you can handle most things. It's a process. I know. It's something that I've been working on for a long, long time. And I can't say that every scenario has come my way that I need to handle and take another risk on. But I'm always assessing what needs to be addressed inside of me, just like I like the fact that you, Joe, are assessing everything that needs to be addressed inside of you so that you don't carry it into the future. You don't want to carry it into relationships. You don't want to carry it into maybe you'll get married someday and now you have it in your relationship and now what do? You don't want that stuff. You want to keep improving who you are so you can bring the best version of yourself into the world and make it a better place. Because every time you improve yourself, it improves the world. You are a part of this world. You are a part of humanity. And everyone that works on themselves works on the world. That's my thought. Joe, I have so much more to say about this, but I'm going to end the show. It's time to go. I appreciate you writing that, and I am so glad that you are learning so much at such a young age. I hope Joe or anyone listening now got some pointers or some tips for your own life, and it helps you in ways that I haven't even thought of. I appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be right back. I'll say my thank yous and my goodbyes and my final words after this. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Overwhelmed Brain. I want to remind you to go to quietbegins.com. If you're experiencing anxiety and you don't want to, and I know you don't want to, head over to quietbegins.com. And I want to thank Samantha and Cynthia for their donations, very generous donations. Wow, thank you. Samantha said, Hey, Paul, I started listening to your podcast last year, and I cannot say enough good things about how amazing you and your content are. I truly feel like it connects with me, and I wanted you to know that I appreciate you and all the hard work you do. Samantha, thank you so much for those words, and thank you so much for your donation. I am very grateful. I am very appreciative, and I feel a little awkward reading all these compliments about me from other people on the show, but I want to read that so I can reply to it and say I am so grateful for your words about me and the show and what we're doing over here at the Overwhelmed Brain and over at my other podcast, Love and Abuse. I receive a lot of good feedback on both, and I am just grateful for you. So you're getting value from this, and you donate or you become a patron member. That is you thanking me for this value, and it seems like everything that comes around goes around, and what goes around comes around. I feel good knowing that you are benefiting from this show. That's really what I'm looking to do, is help you benefit and tell you everything I know. I mean, I come on this podcast, on my other podcast, every week, and I want to give you everything I know. So when I learn something new, it's coming out. And I want to keep doing it as long as possible, and these donations make it happen. And of course, Cynthia also donated. I want to thank you, Cynthia. You said, thank you for the Love and Abuse and Selfish People, Narcissistic Abuser podcasts. Cynthia, that is amazing. I am so glad you're getting value from my other show as well. And like I said, if I learn something, if I figure something out, or if there's information that I want to share with you, I will share it. And you thanking me in this way is definitely not necessary, but I am grateful for it. So thank you again, both Samantha and Cynthia. I appreciate your words. And also thank you to all the members of the Patreon program. I absolutely am grateful for you over at patron.theoverwhelmedbrain.com. If you're a patron member, you can access the private episodes in there and the free workbooks and all kinds of other stuff I got going on in there. Feel free to visit that. That's also where you can make a one-time donation as well. I don't come on the air and beg for donations. It just happens, and I am grateful for those that want to do that for the show. I appreciate all of you. Thank you. And speaking of love and abuse, I just recorded a recent episode, and it's about what some people do, which is turn around the conversation so it's back on you, making you focus on yourself, making you explain things so that they can stay out of trouble. And what I mean by that is emotionally abusive people, some of them, will use this technique where if they know they're getting in trouble or they're being blamed for something or that they are sensing that they're going to have to take responsibility for something, what they'll do is turn around the conversation and put it back on you so that you are A, defending yourself, and B, explaining all of the things that the emotional abuser distorted so that they stay out of the spotlight. So when you're in the spotlight, what the emotional abuser has done is turn it back on you so that you continue to talk and explain yourself and defend yourself. And as long as the emotional abuser keeps distorting the facts and keeps the attention back on you, then the abuser never takes responsibility and doesn't have to, and it puts you in a confused state and exhausts you, on and on and on. And I just created that episode. It's live now. You can go to loveandabuse.com. and you'll find the episode. It's called The Turnaround Game, How Emotionally Abusive People Keep You Busy Explaining and Defending Yourself. And I'm just sharing that with you because even if you're not in an emotionally abusive relationship, there are people like this. There are people that you can say one thing and they'll tell you another, and now you have to explain that they're wrong, but they did it on purpose because they want you to continue talking and feel like you have to keep defending yourself. And I don't want you in that space. I don't want you in a situation where you always feel like you have to explain or defend yourself, because that might be part of the manipulation. I want to help you stay out of manipulation. So check that out if you're interested over at loveandabuse.com. And finally, I'd like to thank Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com for some of the music transitions in The Overwhelmed Brain. And for my final words, I'm going to make my last comment on Joe's email. And it's one sentence that he wrote that said, "I've just barely gotten over the hump of accepting myself for who I am, warts and all." Now, what a great thing to say, because as I get older, I get more moles, I get more wrinkles. You know, this is unappealing. I'm not really proud to say all this stuff, but I'm saying it just like Joe said to me, hey, this is who I am. This is what I've got going on in my body, and this is just something I have to live with. So that's why I come on the air and I'm vulnerable and I'll tell you the things that are happening with me. Not everything, but I'll tell you things that I don't find appealing about me. And I think this helps maybe some people get out of their shell. Because I had another young guy write to me. He said, I'm afraid to go on this class trip because I know once I take my shirt off, everyone's going to see how, I forget what it was, splotchy or something, splotchy my skin is. And I'm so embarrassed about it. And so on that episode, I told the story of something that I never shared with anyone. Because I knew that if he heard my story and I'm able to tell, 50,000, 100,000 people that listen to this show, if I'm able to tell my story to the world like that and tell people what I have been embarrassed to show people about taking my shirt off at a pool, if I'm able to tell that story, then maybe someone listening might be able to break through their fear. And so I told the story of my physical insecurity, and he wrote back to me and said, "Oh my God, you made me feel so much better. I'm going on that class trip. Thank you so much." And it just made me feel so proud. I felt so good getting that message back. That changed his life, I hope. I'm not saying, hey, look what I did. I'm saying that maybe that one thing that he took a step into that risk that we talked about earlier changed his life. And he suddenly felt like, hey, who cares if they have a judgment about my body? Then maybe they're really not my friend after all. Once he was able to get over that initial hurdle, his life changed. I believe that everything from this point on for him will be different because it won't be based on his fear of someone seeing his skin and making a comment or a judgment. It'll be based on what he wants to do with his life and what he wants to experience in his life. It won't be limited by a fear that in the big picture of things doesn't matter. It feels like it should matter because when we're kids point everything out. Hey, look at that guy's nose. Hey, look at that woman's feet. Kids point this stuff out. And if we are the recipient of what a kid points out, even if we're a kid, we take it personally and we become self-conscious about it. And we don't want to show anyone that part of our body again, or we don't want to talk in front of somebody else because we have a lisp or an accent. And we hold these fears and we bring them into the future. And then suddenly they don't apply anymore, but we still have the fear. Why do we keep these fears? They just don't go away. And so sometimes it takes people a long time to ask themselves, why am I feeling this way? This is ridiculous. We're adults now. Everyone's got something about themselves they don't like. So why am I any different? What would happen if I suddenly said, hey, I don't like this thing about myself? I guarantee you another adult's going to come along and say, I don't like this about myself. Thank you for coming out and saying that because I have this issue and I can't get past it. So now I feel more comfortable around you because you chose to be vulnerable around me. And, this doesn't have to be just adults. I'm just saying we take this stuff from childhood and bring it into our adult world. No longer applies, yet we still hold the fear. It's kind of redundant. We don't need it anymore. It's futile to have the fear. Unless you're around dangerous people. That's a different story. But most people aren't going to be dangerous in your life. You're probably not going to want to surround yourself with dangerous people, which means most people are probably safe. And if they're safe, then we can choose to be more vulnerable with those people. And we just have to look at our own fears and assess what we need to hold on to and what we don't. And so, Joe, you said, I'm accepting myself for who I am, warts and all. Hear, hear. Congratulations. That is something to celebrate. Hey, everyone, I have warts. Now I'm kind of joking. I'm not saying that you should yell that out into the world, even though I do sometimes. But who cares? You know what? Even if somebody says, ew, you have warts, how old are they? How old are these people that are saying, ew, you have warts? That's a childlike reaction or response that goes away with time and maturity. And if somebody who's in their 20s, 30s, 40s, or older says anything like that with that childlike response, then they haven't grown up. Yeah, that's okay. Some people you're going to run into haven't grown up. And if that's anyone listening right now, if you haven't grown up yet because you still have childlike responses, well, then now you know that it's something to work on. And if you think, well, I already know it's something to work on. I don't need you to tell me that. Okay, I'm sorry. Then I'll back off and let you know that I have things to work on too. I'm always working on myself because you never know what's going to come along that's going to be an emotional trigger for you. And when you find out, you can either bring it up for processing and hopefully releasing, or you can stuff it back down. And I'll give you one guess which one is the healthier choice. So as we part, like I always say, keep an open mind because this will help you step into your power so that you can create the life you want. Always take steps to grow and evolve. You are powerful beyond measure. And above all, and this is something I absolutely know to be true about you, you are amazing.